Income Traps: Why Raises Don't Help. Written by Ronnie Rowland. Published by Growth Literacy Lounge. You felt it, didn't you? That first big raise. The email came through, or maybe it was set across a desk, and for a moment everything paused. Relief, pride, validation, it washed over you like warm sunlight. This was it. A turning point. But then, bills adjusted. Expectations shifted. The numbers changed, but the stress didn't. The finish line just moved further ahead. It's a quiet irony of modern life. More money doesn't always mean more freedom. In fact, for many it means less. Less margin. Less flexibility. Less joy. What happened? This book is about that question, and the traps hiding inside the answer. Because earning more feels like winning, but spending more can feel like survival. And without realizing it, we begin chasing comfort like a mirage, always just one purchase, one upgrade, one lifestyle tier away from finally making it. There's a term for this: lifestyle inflation ***. Economists coined it. But what it describes is deeply human. As income grows, so does what we consider normal. Jim Rohn once said, "We must all suffer one of two things, the pain of discipline or the pain of regret." Most choose the latter, quietly, gradually, unintentionally. This book invites you to choose differently. Not by denying joy, but by reclaiming control. Each chapter will expose the psychology, economics, and identity shifts that make raises feel like traps, and offer practical strategies to escape them. Because the goal isn't just to make more. It's to keep what matters most: your peace, your options, your freedom. Let's begin. Chapter 1: The Raise That Changed Nothing. It was the kind of moment most people wait years for. A promotion. A pay bump. A recognition of value. Sam didn't celebrate outwardly, but inside, something clicked. A quiet sense of arrival. He had earned more, and now, finally, life could breathe a little. At first it did. Dinner at that place he'd always passed by. A slightly newer car, used but nicer. He upgraded his phone, subscribed to a few services that made life smoother. Nothing wild, just better. And why not? He wasn't being reckless. He was being reasonable. Rewarding effort with comfort. 6 months later, Sam was tired. Tired and behind. Credit card balances had crept upward. His savings account remained stubbornly low. The raise had vanished, absorbed into life like water into dry ground. There was no celebration now. Just a quiet question that echoed late at night: why does it still feel tight? He isn't alone. Across professions, income levels, and life stages, people report the same experience: the raise that made no difference. For many, financial stress doesn't fade with more money, it mutates. From scarcity into complexity. From not having enough into maintaining too much. The human mind adapts quickly. What once felt luxurious now feels necessary. The better mattress, the newer watch, the slightly pricier neighborhood, each becomes the new baseline. This isn't carelessness. It's psychology. A process called hedonic adaptation ensures we adjust to new comforts until they no longer feel like upgrades. But there's more than biology at play. Society has a script for what success should look like, and raises hand you a new role in that story. You're earning more, so you should live more. Appear more. Spend more. Even if no one says it aloud, the pressure is there, ambient and persuasive. 1,000 subtle cues whisper that you haven't quite made it yet, that you owe it to yourself to reflect your status, to act the part. So people step into better versions of their old life, nicer clothes, sleeker gadgets, finer meals, and call it progress. But often, it's just maintenance. Because the more refined the lifestyle, the more effort it takes to hold it steady. The raise buys you a ticket to a faster treadmill, not a better destination. And then comes the trap. You can't scale back easily without feeling like you're moving backward. That apartment you upgraded to? Downgrading now feels like failure. The gym, the car, the weekend trips, they were once dreams. Now they're anchors. You built a lifestyle on your new income, and walking away from it feels like undoing your own progress. Here's the uncomfortable truth: freedom doesn't come from what you earn. It comes from what you keep. The gap between income and expenses, that quiet margin, is where peace lives. It's where options are born, resilience is built, and pressure loses its grip. Without that margin, every raise is a mirage. People assume more money will create more space. But unless that space is protected, guarded against impulse, trend, and expectation, it evaporates. That's the raise that changes nothing. The raise that gets absorbed. The raise that tricks you into running faster just to stay where you are. But awareness disrupts the pattern. When you start to see the trap, you start to see the exits. And that's where this journey begins. Because the goal isn't to fear raises. It's to make them matter. Chapter 2: Lifestyle Creep, the Silent Upgrade. It doesn't happen all at once. No one wakes up and decides to double their monthly expenses. It starts with small decisions, unquestioned, seemingly harmless. A slightly better bottle of wine. A subscription you didn't really need, but hey, it's only $12. A weekend getaway because you deserve it. And in isolation you do. But lifestyle creep doesn't ask for permission. It enters quietly, dressed as progress. It whispers in your ear with the language of ease, of convenience, of reward. You earn more, so you adjust. Just a little. Then a little more. And one day, you realize your budget is breathing down your neck again, just like it used to, before the raise, before the bonus, before the title change. Only now, the pressure feels more complicated. Because this version of your life looks better. Feels better. But it costs more. And you're not sure how to go back without unraveling it all. That's the power of lifestyle creep. It rarely feels like a choice. It feels like a natural evolution. But it's not evolution, it's erosion. It eats away at your margin, your freedom, one well-justified upgrade at a time. The human brain normalizes improvements faster than we realize. A nicer car becomes just a car. The upgraded kitchen becomes just the kitchen. We adapt. And in doing so, we erase the very joy we thought those things would bring. The new becomes the norm, and the bar rises quietly in the background. Worse, we rarely question it. In a culture that celebrates visible success, lifestyle upgrades are affirmed. Liked. Admired. No one congratulates you for holding the line. No one posts about resisting lifestyle creep. But everyone notices the new shoes, the remodeled home, the 5th vacation of the year. And so we keep pace, not always out of ego, but often out of inertia. Consider this: if every time your income increased, your lifestyle stayed the same, you'd be building financial momentum. Compounding security. Creating space. But if every bump in pay is met with a bump in lifestyle, the meter resets. You're earning more just to stand still. And standing still, in a culture that runs, can feel like falling behind. So we rationalize. We frame lifestyle inflation as self-care. As alignment. As living fully. And to be clear, comfort isn't the enemy. Neither is beauty, or enjoyment, or even spending. The problem is unconscious drift, when choices aren't choices anymore, but reflexes. To break the cycle, awareness must lead. Ask yourself, what did I upgrade, and why? Was it need? Was it joy? Or was it expectation, comparison, momentum? Because lifestyle creep rarely announces itself. It's not a crisis. It's not a splurge. It's a slow, silent expansion that redefines your baseline without asking if it should. The antidote isn't austerity. It's clarity. Knowing what actually adds value. Knowing what matters enough to spend for, and what simply fills space. The goal isn't to deny yourself. The goal is to direct yourself toward a life that aligns with your values, not your pay stub. Because every time your lifestyle rises to meet your income, you trade a bit of freedom for a bit of comfort. And not all comforts are worth the cost. The raise didn't trap you. The silence did. The absence of intention. But it's not too late to reclaim it. The next time the urge to upgrade appears, pause. And ask, is this a step forward? Or just another silent shift? Chapter 3: The hedonic treadmill, running without getting ahead. Imagine running on a treadmill. You're sweating, pushing, lungs full of effort. But the scenery never changes. No matter how fast you move, you're not getting anywhere. This is the hedonic treadmill. It's not just a metaphor, it's a documented psychological phenomenon. As humans, we have a remarkable ability to adapt. We crave change, but we also adjust to it quickly. What once thrilled us becomes familiar. What once felt like luxury becomes standard. And so, we chase the next thing. Then the next. The treadmill never stops. It just speeds up. You get a raise. At first, it feels like expansion. You can breathe, dream, stretch. But then the new lifestyle settles in. You've adapted. You want more. Not out of greed, but because your mind recalibrated its idea of normal. The dopamine wore off, and now you're back to baseline. It's not your fault. This is how the brain protects itself from overstimulation. But it creates a dangerous loop. The things that once satisfied no longer do. So you upgrade. Again. And again. But the joy is fleeting, and the pace is exhausting. This is how a person can triple their income and feel just as restless, just as anxious, just as trapped as before. Because the treadmill doesn't reward you with arrival. It rewards you with motion. But only if you keep running. Consider the research. Studies show that after a certain income threshold, enough to cover basic needs and moderate comfort, additional earnings don't increase long-term happiness. The boost is temporary. Then comes the adaptation, and the cycle begins anew. And yet, we believe the next thing will be different. The next car, the next raise, the next square footage, that will be the thing that finally makes it all click. But the treadmill doesn't allow exits. It allows acceleration. And acceleration feels like progress. This is why financial pressure doesn't always come from lack. Sometimes it comes from motion. From velocity without direction. From confusing movement with improvement. But you can step off. Not by rejecting success or ambition, but by understanding that happiness is less about more, and more about enough. Enough isn't a number. It's a mindset. It's the place where gratitude outruns desire. Where you stop measuring joy by what's next and start noticing what already is. Without this shift, the treadmill becomes your life. More effort, more earning, more upgrading, without ever arriving. You'll look back and realize you were always running. And wonder why you still felt stuck. Escaping the hedonic treadmill requires intention. It means pausing the pattern of automatic escalation. It means choosing to celebrate stability rather than constantly seeking stimulation. Ask yourself, what did I once dream of that I now overlook? A quiet moment. A safe home. A working car. A job that provides. These were wins once. But the treadmill tells you they're not enough anymore. The good news? You can redefine what progress looks like. You can slow the speed. You can step off. Because life isn't lived on a moving belt of upgrades. It's lived in the quiet space where contentment settles in and striving loosens its grip. The hedonic treadmill doesn't stop on its own. But you don't have to keep running. Chapter 4: The Pressure of Looking Successful. Not long ago, success was quiet. It was measured in stability, in legacy, in things that didn't need to be seen. But today, success has a spotlight. It lives in feeds, filters, and carefully composed glimpses of a curated life. It's not just about what you have, it's about how convincingly you can display it. This isn't vanity. It's survival in a culture that equates visibility with value. People feel pressure not just to do well, but to look like they're doing well. A pressure so ambient, so woven into daily life, that it often goes unnoticed until the spending starts to sting. You get a raise, and suddenly, there's a script you feel obligated to follow. A better wardrobe. Nicer dinners. Upgraded vacations. After all, people at your level do those things. Don't they? You start to wonder if your car still fits your new position. If your apartment reflects your new income. If your old lifestyle now sends the wrong message. But who wrote the message? That question rarely gets asked. Because the pressure doesn't come with terms and conditions. It comes with smiles, admiration, and likes. It's reinforced by compliments and quiet nods of approval. Every external validation becomes internal justification. And slowly, you begin building a life for others to observe, not for you to enjoy. There's a subtle but dangerous shift that happens when self-worth becomes tied to perception. You no longer buy things for their usefulness, but for the signal they send. The shoes, the watch, the hotel suite, they're not just items. They're stories. Stories you want others to read and believe. But the cost of maintaining that story grows. Because appearances demand consistency. Once you've posted the business class flight, the luxury Airbnb, the designer label, it's hard to go backward without feeling like you've lost status. Not in the world necessarily, but in your own reflection. This is the trap of performative success. It turns lifestyle into theater. The lines get blurry between what you actually enjoy and what you've convinced yourself you're supposed to enjoy. You start making decisions to match an image rather than your values. And that image is relentless. Social media accelerates this. We consume highlights of others' lives and internalize them as expectations for our own. A friend buys a house, and suddenly your apartment feels small. A colleague posts from a Michelin star restaurant, and your dinner at home feels less like a choice and more like a compromise. The benchmark keeps moving, fed by a never-ending stream of comparison. But here's the truth behind the curtain: many of the people playing the role of successful are quietly drowning in stress. High income, high spending, low margin. The glow on the outside often hides the strain within. And yet, the performance continues, because everyone assumes everyone else is doing fine. It takes strength to step out of that loop. To choose authenticity over applause. To define success by alignment rather than admiration. It's not about living small, it's about living true. The next time you feel the tug to upgrade for the sake of optics, pause. Ask, would I still want this if no one saw it? That question can reveal more than a spreadsheet ever could. Looking successful is easy. Being at peace is rare. The raise was meant to free you, not costume you. Don't trade real wealth for rented applause. Chapter 5. Why more money rarely equals less stress. There's a myth we carry like a compass. If we could just make more, the stress would disappear. The bills wouldn't bother us. The tension would lift. We could breathe. But for many, when the income goes up, the stress doesn't go down. It multiplies. It changes shape. It migrates into new corners of life. More money often brings more complexity. More accounts. More responsibilities. More to manage. You move from worrying about affording things to worrying about maintaining them. The fear shifts from not having enough to not keeping enough. From scarcity to sustainability. And that shift is quieter, but no less heavy. With higher income comes higher stakes. A mistake costs more. A bad investment carries deeper consequences. The pressure to make it work grows, not just financially but emotionally. You're no longer just trying to survive, you're trying to justify your progress. And that creates a fragile kind of tension. Stress doesn't only come from hardship. It also comes from expectations. As your income rises, so does the assumption that you should have everything figured out. That financial peace should follow automatically. That your life should be insulated from struggle. So when stress shows up anyway, it feels like failure. Like you're doing something wrong. Like you're the only one still holding your breath. But you're not. This is the hidden weight of prosperity. It's not always about freedom. Sometimes it's about keeping up with the image of freedom. And that image is expensive. Research shows that beyond a certain income threshold, enough to meet basic needs and some discretionary comfort, additional earnings have diminishing returns on emotional well-being. The psychological lift flattens. People with high incomes report similar levels of anxiety, sleeplessness, and emotional fatigue as those earning far less. Because stress isn't just about numbers. It's about space. Financial margin, the gap between what you earn and what you spend, is where peace lives. Without it, you could double your salary and still feel like you're drowning. The pool may be deeper, but the water still rises. And if your lifestyle inflates to match your income, the pressure never eases. It just wears a nicer suit. You may find yourself more irritable, more restless, even more exhausted than you were when you earned less. Why? Because your decisions have multiplied. Your obligations have grown. The cost of a misstep has risen. You're managing a bigger machine now, and it demands attention. And yet, we rarely talk about this. It feels taboo to admit stress in the midst of success. So people bottle it, hide it, or worse, suppress it by spending more, buying relief in the form of convenience, entertainment, or distraction. But temporary relief isn't the same as lasting peace. The paradox is that many people were less anxious when they had less. Not because less is better, but because it was simpler. There was clarity. You knew what mattered. There was little to lose, so little to fear. But now, with more at stake, every decision feels weightier, every risk more personal. The solution isn't to make less. It's to live with intention. To build systems that create space. To remember that wealth isn't measured by what you earn, it's measured by how little of it you need to be at peace. More money can buy options, but only if you guard them. It can reduce certain types of stress, but only if you don't replace them with new ones. The next raise doesn't have to come with tension. But that depends on what you choose to carry with it. Stress doesn't vanish with income. It retreats with margin. Chapter 6: When Comfort Becomes a Cage. At first, it feels like freedom. The better couch. The heated seats. The extra space in the new house. You exhale. You stretch into the life you've earned. After years of saying, "Not yet," you finally say yes. And it feels good. Of course it does. That's what comfort is supposed to feel like, relief. But then something shifts. Slowly. Subtly. What once felt like an upgrade starts to feel like a requirement. The apartment you once dreamed of becomes the apartment you must maintain. The car that once impressed you now feels average. The clothes, the trips, the conveniences, they no longer feel like choices. They feel like obligations. This is the turning point. When comfort stops being comfort and starts becoming the minimum standard. And maintaining that standard begins to feel non-negotiable. That's when the trap snaps shut, not loudly, but quietly, with a whisper, "You can't go back now." This is how comfort becomes a cage. It doesn't restrict you with chains. It restricts you with expectations, both external and internal. You begin designing your life not around joy or values, but around preservation. You're no longer asking, "What do I want?" but instead, "How do I keep what I have?" The psychological cost is heavy. Because the fear of loss weighs more than the excitement of gain. Studies in behavioral economics call it loss aversion, the idea that people feel more pain from losing something than pleasure from gaining it. So even if you're no longer happy with your lifestyle, the idea of downsizing feels like a threat to your identity. And so people stay. In jobs they've outgrown. In homes that drain them. In routines that numb them. Not because they love these things, but because they're afraid of what it would mean to let them go. The irony is painful. The very things you once pursued for freedom now dictate your choices. You worked for flexibility, and now you feel cornered. You thought comfort would unlock life, but now it defines its boundaries. The house has rooms you don't use. The subscription boxes go unopened. The car sits in traffic like any other. But you keep them, because letting go would feel like losing ground. But was it ever ground you truly needed? This is the discomfort comfort hides. That what we accumulate to make life easier can sometimes make it heavier. That what was once a gift can become a guardrail. And that the more we insulate ourselves, the less willing we become to risk, to pivot, to choose differently. You might look at your life and realize you're managing it more than you're living it. That your decisions are shaped not by vision, but by upkeep. That the lifestyle you once celebrated has become something you quietly serve. There's no shame in this realization. Only power. Because cages, once seen, can be escaped. The first step is not radical change. It's radical clarity. Ask yourself, What comforts have become cages? What are you afraid to lose, and why? Would stepping back be a loss or a return? Comfort should support you, not confine you. It should offer rest, not require sacrifice. It should enhance your freedom, not consume it. A raise is meant to expand your life, not shrink your options in silk-lined walls. Don't let comfort imprison the very freedom you work so hard to earn. Chapter 7: Identity Inflation. Becoming who you think you should be. It starts innocently. A better title, a new income bracket, the recognition you always wanted. You begin to see yourself differently, not just in the mirror, but in the world. People respond to you with more respect. There's a shift in how you walk into rooms, how you answer questions, how you view your place in the hierarchy. This isn't just about money. It's about identity. With each financial milestone, the image of who you are, and who you're supposed to be evolves. You upgrade, not just your wardrobe or your home, but your story. You start editing the narrative. Polishing the version of yourself that now fits your success. And in that process, something subtle but significant begins to inflate. The expectations. With higher income comes an invisible weight. The need to match it with behavior, lifestyle, and status symbols that affirm, to others and to yourself, that you belong in this new tier. You're no longer just a person with a raise, you're a person with a role. A reputation to protect. A new version of yourself to maintain. And like all inflation, identity inflation is expensive. You start making choices less out of desire and more out of alignment with who you think you're supposed to be. You sign up for memberships, not because you want them, but because people like you have them. You start choosing restaurants, vacations, even hobbies that feel more like a fit for your perceived identity than your true interests. This version of success is performative. But it's also seductive. Because it feels like evolution. Like growth. Like becoming someone new. And in many ways you are. But the question is, are you evolving into your values, or just inflating into your income? The danger isn't in growing. Growth is good. The danger is in allowing your outer identity to outpace your inner clarity. When your lifestyle begins shaping your character instead of your character shaping your lifestyle, you start living from the outside in. That kind of life is fragile. Because any threat to your income becomes a threat to your sense of self. If you've built your identity on earning power, what happens when the raise doesn't come next year? What happens when the market shifts, or the title disappears, or the promotion goes to someone else? The version of you built on status begins to crack. And suddenly, your peace is no longer grounded in who you are, it's tied to what you can maintain. This is the trap of identity inflation. It trades authenticity for image. It whispers that if you stop looking the part, you stop being the part. And that fear keeps people stuck, overextended, overcommit, and quietly unsure of who they really are beneath it all. But it doesn't have to be this way. You can grow your income without inflating your identity. You can evolve without performing. The key is anchoring your sense of self to values, not valuables. Purpose, not perception. Ask yourself, if the money changed tomorrow, would I still recognize myself? Would you feel less worthy, or simply less visible? Would you know how to rebuild, or would you feel like you've lost who you are? Real wealth is stability of self. The kind that doesn't waver with market trends or bonus checks. The kind that knows success isn't something you wear, it's something you carry quietly, securely, unshaken. Because the person you are becoming should never cost you the person you are. Chapter 8: The Illusion of Arrival. There's a story we've all heard, even if no one ever told it out loud. It goes like this: work hard, climb the ladder, earn more, and eventually arrive. At some point, there will be a moment, a number, a lifestyle, where the striving ends. Where peace begins. The mythical destination where enough finally feels like enough. But that arrival rarely comes. Not because people aren't trying. Not because they don't earn more or reach higher. But because arrival is often an illusion, a moving target that shifts just as you approach it. You think you've reached the summit, only to realize it was a ridge, not the peak. And so, you keep climbing. It happens in whispers. You reach the salary you once prayed for, and suddenly it feels like the new minimum. You buy the home that once seemed out of reach, and now it's simply where you live. The big job, the corner office, the six-figure paycheck, once symbols of arrival, become the new normal. And the bar rises quietly again. This is the cruel trick of achievement without reflection. When you never pause to ask what enough looks like, you default to the endless game of more. Each milestone becomes a checkpoint, not a destination. You keep chasing the feeling you thought success would bring, but it never fully lands. Why? Because arrival is not a place. It's a state of being. And without intention, that state is unreachable. The brain is wired for forward motion. We're motivated by what's next, what's better, what's higher. But unchecked, that motivation turns into restlessness. You become so focused on progress that you miss the permission to rest, to savor, to inhabit the life you've already built. Arrival, in its healthiest form, isn't about having everything. It's about appreciating what you have while still pursuing what matters. It's the rare moment when contentment and ambition exist side by side, not as enemies, but as companions. But most never get there. Not because it's impossible, but because they confuse the symbol of arrival with the feeling of it. They assume more visibility, more income, more luxury will produce more peace. But peace doesn't scale with salary. It scales with self-awareness. The illusion is powerful because it's reinforced everywhere. Success stories are framed as destinations. The entrepreneur who sold the company. The athlete who signed the contract. The executive who bought the second home. But what happens after that moment is rarely told. The restlessness. The pressure to maintain. The quiet question, was this it? Those questions only surface when you slow down. When you stop mistaking motion for meaning. When you realize that arriving externally means little if you've never arrived internally. This isn't a call to complacency. It's a call to clarity. Progress is valuable. Growth is good. But not if it blinds you to the present. Not if it convinces you that your life is always one raise, one purchase, one status level away from finally being okay. You may already be living inside the life you once hoped for. Don't let the illusion of arrival rob you of its reality. Pause and look around. Not just at what you want, but at what you've built. The comforts, the people, the options. Ask yourself, if this isn't enough, what would be, and is that goal rooted in purpose, or just another mirage? Because maybe the feeling you've been chasing isn't ahead of you. Maybe it's been waiting for you to notice it, right where you are. Chapter 9. How to create margin and keep it. Margin is more than math. It's more than what's left after the bills are paid or what remains in the bank at the end of the month. It's a feeling. A freedom. A quiet space where you breathe easier because you're not living at the edge of your capacity. But for most, margin doesn't appear automatically. It doesn't come as a bonus with a raise or a built-in feature of success. In fact, the more money people make, the more elusive margin tends to become. Because lifestyle expands. Commitments grow. The pace quickens. And without deliberate choices, the extra gets absorbed. To create margin, you have to be intentional. You have to break the pattern that says every financial gain must translate into a lifestyle upgrade. That belief is common, but it's not law. You can choose differently. You can create space on purpose, and that space becomes the foundation of freedom. It begins with restraint, not restriction. Restraint says, I could have more, but I don't need to. It's not denial, it's direction. It's understanding that every dollar not spent is a dollar that builds possibility. Margin isn't what's left over. It's what's protected. And that protection must be active. Because money has a gravity to it. It pulls at your attention, your desires, your sense of what's normal. The world around you encourages consumption. It praises expansion. Few voices will ever tell you to pause, to hold back, to build quiet strength instead of visible status. That's why margin is rare. Because it's invisible. No one applauds you for not upgrading your car. No one notices when you stay in your home a few years longer, or when you opt out of the expensive dinner to hit your savings goal. But margin isn't for show. It's for you. Practically, margin is built in layers. The first is awareness. Know what you spend and why. Not in obsessive detail, but in honest clarity. The second is intention. Decide ahead of time how much of any raise or bonus will go to lifestyle, and how much will go to margin. Without this decision, lifestyle will win by default. The third layer is boundaries. Set limits for yourself, not as punishment, but as protection. You don't need to justify every purchase to the world, but you should be able to explain it to yourself. Ask, is this buying freedom, or just noise? Keeping margin requires just as much effort as creating it. Because once space exists, there will always be pressure to fill it. Advertisers will tempt you. Friends will invite you. Your own mind will whisper, why not? You can afford it now, but affordability is not the same as alignment. And spending just because you can is often the fastest way to return to the edge. When you protect margin, you protect your future self. You create flexibility. The ability to change careers, to take a break, to weather a crisis, to invest in something meaningful. Margin is what allows you to say yes to the right things and no to the urgent but unimportant ones. Without margin, even abundance feels like pressure. With it, even modest means can feel rich. So let the next raise be different. Let it be a lever, not a trap. Let it build space, not speed. Let it create the room you need to live on purpose. Because margin isn't just money left unspent. It's the breathe between the beats of your life. And it's where peace begins. Chapter 10. Redefining what enough means. Enough is a word we all use, but few of us define. It hangs in the air like a promise, just out of reach. One more raise. One more room. One more milestone. Then maybe we'll have it. Then we'll rest. Then we'll stop chasing. But what happens when enough keeps moving? It moves slowly, like a tide. You barely notice until you're deeper than you meant to go. What satisfied you last year now feels insufficient. What once felt extravagant now seems expected. And so you aim higher, not because you're greedy, but because your definition of normal has quietly shifted. This is the danger of never naming enough. It becomes a horizon that retreats as you approach it. You chase a version of peace that's always just beyond the next purchase, the next goal, the next tax bracket. You tell yourself you're being responsible, ambitious, driven. And maybe you are. But beneath it, there's often a quiet ache, when will it be okay to stop? The truth is, enough isn't a number. It's a mindset. A deliberate threshold. A moment where you decide, not drift, into satisfaction. It's a line drawn with wisdom, not envy. With clarity, not comparison. To find it, you have to step outside the noise. The noise that says more is always better. That you're only as valuable as your next achievement. That contentment is laziness. That restraint is weakness. But the noise is wrong. True enough is personal. It considers your values, your priorities, your peace. For one person, it might mean living in a modest home with financial freedom. For another, it might mean building wealth with generosity as the central goal. Enough doesn't mean giving up ambition. It means putting ambition in service to meaning. To redefine enough, start with questions, not answers. What matters to you more than appearance? What brings you deep satisfaction, not just quick pleasure? What level of comfort allows you to breathe without making you numb? Then look at what you're trading for the endless pursuit of more. Time. Energy. Presence. Creativity. The cost is rarely just financial. It's emotional. Mental. Sometimes even spiritual. And too often, we pay those prices without realizing we had the option to stop. But stopping doesn't mean settling. It means choosing. Choosing a life aligned with who you are, not who the world tells you to be. It means anchoring yourself in clarity, so that each dollar, each decision, each opportunity passes through a filter that asks, does this move me toward peace, or just more? People worry that drawing the line of enough will make them stagnant. But it does the opposite. It liberates. Because once you know your version of enough, you can stop performing. You can stop proving. You can start living, not just striving. And ironically, this is where real abundance begins. Not in endless gain, but in grounded gratitude. In knowing what you need and walking confidently inside that boundary. In having the courage to say, this is good. This is full. This is enough. When you define your enough, you take back the power that drifting culture tries to steal. You stop running someone else's race. You plant yourself in your own story, and grow from there. Enough isn't what the world hands you. It's what you decide to hold. Chapter 11, The Freedom Formula, Spend Less, Live More. There's a quiet truth that rarely makes headlines. The people with the most financial peace are not always the ones who earn the most. They're often the ones who spend with intention. Who build lives not around earnings, but around values. Who understand that freedom is not found in maximizing lifestyle, but in minimizing dependence. Spend less, live more. It sounds simple, almost too simple for a world obsessed with scaling up. But simplicity is often mistaken for smallness, when in fact it holds the key to something expansive. The less your life costs, the more choices you have. The more flexibility you gain. The more risks you can take without fear. The more room you create to pivot, to pause, to pursue what actually matters. Spending less is not about deprivation. It's about liberation. It's about no longer needing to feed an ever-hungry lifestyle just to maintain an image or keep pace with an old ambition. When you lower the financial threshold for your contentment, you raise your capacity to live with freedom. The formula is elegant. Margin creates movement. When you live beneath your means, you create space. That space can be converted into opportunity, time, rest, or generosity. You're no longer stuck in survival mode or status mode. You get to operate in purpose mode. But this path requires a quiet rebellion. Because everything around you suggests otherwise. You're told to level up, buy in, move forward. You're handed metrics that measure success in square footage, price tags, and how seamlessly you can display your prosperity. Choosing to opt out of that game isn't easy. But it's powerful. There's a moment when spending less becomes an act of courage. Not because you can't afford more, but because you no longer need more. And that distinction changes everything. It means your financial decisions are guided by vision, not pressure. It means your lifestyle reflects your priorities, not your paycheck. It means your raise becomes a tool, not a trap. And what you gain in return isn't just savings, it's sovereignty. Sovereignty over your schedule. Over your energy. Over the direction of your life. You get to say no, not because you have to, but because you want to. You get to pursue work that fulfills you, not just work that funds you. You get to define success on your own terms, not society's. This is the essence of living more. It's not about doing less. It's about doing what matters, more often, with less resistance. It's about building a life where your values aren't buried under obligations. Where your income supports your freedom instead of silently controlling it. Living more is found in moments, unguarded, unhurried, unburdened by the next financial stretch. It's found in knowing you could do more, but you don't have to. It's found in the space between pressure and peace. This isn't about settling for less. It's about choosing more wisely. It's about recognizing that the most valuable things in life, presence, purpose, peace, aren't bought. They're made possible by margin. And that margin is built when you spend less than you earn and refuse to let lifestyle outpace wisdom. In a world addicted to more, the real revolution is contentment. Spend less. Live more. Because in the end, freedom is not a reward for what you earn. It's the result of what you keep. And how you choose to live with it. Take care and be well.